We all know UI is crucial to games. Skyrim's UI is alright, but it can be better. Today I'll be showing you how to put together a UI similar to my build, as well as highlighting other hidden gems you might have missed. Welcome to the UI guide.
Skyrim. Get up.
Before we begin, there will be quite a lot of information in this guide, so I'll be splitting this video into sections to make it more digestible. I'll first go through the types of UI mods for my build, so we'll go through the foundation, interface overhauls, font replacers, gameplay, and accessory mods. I'll also be showing you important MCM and INI settings on the way for some mods, and hidden gems you might want to install. Alright, without further ado, let's get into it. I'll be going through these mods briefly, so I'll try to keep things concise and straight to the point, but I highly recommend you to check out the mod pages for the mods you do decide to install, just so you know if you need any requirements and how to go about installing them. I'd also like to mention I have set up my UI in a particular way, so it works well with other gameplay mods I run with. There might be elements here and there that you don't want to incorporate in your build, and that's fine. So take a look at the mods I'll be presenting, and pick and choose which ones you want to install. I always recommend you do this process rather than just copying other builds, as this ensures you have a custom game that best suits you. Alright, let's start off with the foundation. Some of these mods you will likely already have, but there might be some you missed. Sky UI. I feel like this goes without saying, but I'll say it anyways. We need Sky UI, as it adds a lot of features to the UI as well as a mod configuration menu. Many other mods require Sky UI as a requirement, so make sure you have this installed. I would also like to mention that Sky UI has icon packs you can switch between. A lot of people don't know this, but you can do this by visiting Sky UI's MCM, so check these icon packs out. I've also set up the Sky UI active effects icons to be positioned in the middle bottom of the screen. If you want to replicate this for yourself, copy these settings in its MCM. iHUD. iHUD comes with some useful features. You can toggle the compass and quest objectives with a hotkey, and you can enable fast fading away of certain HUD elements. There are other minor features as well, but I personally use iHUD only to let the crosshair appear when I'm looking at something. And I set up fast fading for the health, stamina, and magicka bars, so this helps keep the UI less cluttered, allowing you to focus on the game when you're not in combat or looking for quest objectives. SkyHUD. SkyHUD is a powerful UI framework. With it, you're able to tinker with HUD elements quite extensively, and so a lot of the other UI mods use it as a requirement. There are also a lot of presets available for you to download, and you can even make your own presets or tweak other presets if you ever feel like doing so. As you can see in this INI configuration file, there are quite a lot of things you can play around with, and if you're going to be using SkyHUD and iHUD, make sure you enable the iHUD compatibility patch in its faux mod. Race menu. This mod completely overhauls, well, the race menu. It's very useful and can save you a lot of time when you're customizing characters. You get a whole bunch of features to help you customize your character, like sculpting and overlays. Another useful feature is being able to save and load character presets. More informative console. Overhauls the console to show you much more information. I highly recommend this for anyone who really gets into modding, as having extra information can be quite useful for a wide variety of reasons. You're able to check out what characters are wearing, their active effects, which plugins objects belong to, and much more. I frequently use this mod to help me debug some issues with my game, so I highly recommend you grab this too. Better dialogue controls. Fixes various issues with dialogue controls and makes them more intuitive to use. Better message box controls. Fixes various issues with the message box controls and makes them more intuitive to use. Flashing save game fixes. There's a strange bug that happens when you try to save or load a game in the in-game menu. It can only really happen when you have a lot of save games, but you can encounter flashing, and it can be quite annoying. Luckily, this mod is able to fix this, helping us make the UI all the more friendly and bug-free. More HUD. Adds very useful information to the HUD. You'll be able to see more information on objects when you hover over them. You'll be able to see the enchantments of weapons and armor, the traits of alchemy ingredients, and if you look at a book, you'll see if you've already read it before or not. Additionally, for some of these special books, you'll also see which skills you stand to level if you read them. Interface overhauls. Some of you might want an interface overhaul. These kinds of mods reskin a lot of your UI elements and give you a very different looking UI. It just hits different, but of course, some of you might not want this, as it does change how the game feels quite substantially. But let me go through some of the interface overhauls you might be interested in. Nordic UI. overhauls the entire interface, as well as implementing a new main menu, UI sound effects, and support for other mods like Quick Loot, True Directional Movement, and SkyHUD. I highly recommend you use Nordic UI, as it's the best and most complete interface overhaul in my opinion. But if you do decide to install Nordic UI, just know that it already comes with better dialogue controls, better message box controls, and flashing save game fixes already. So you won't need to install these mods if you have Nordic UI. Also consider taking a look at Nordic UI miscellaneous patches. There are some nice options in its faux mod, such as modifying the loading screen, tween menu, and more. And I have a crap ton of mods with MCMs, so the wider MCM option was especially handy for me since it doubles the scrolling speed, which is a must-have for when you're playing with a controller. Speaking of controllers, I play with a DualShock 5, so I also installed the Nordic UI PlayStation Icons patch. But I doubt any of you will play with a PlayStation controller, but hey, if you do and you happen to be using Nordic UI, you'll need this. E&B was updated a while back to disable itself when in loading screens and on the main menu. This change was implemented to reduce loading times. However, the way it does this is by checking the smoke mesh. You know that smoke you see in the main menu and loading screens? Yeah, that one. Well, other mods might disable or replace this smoke mesh, and in turn this confuses E&B, so it will enable itself during loading screens and the main menu again, which we don't want. We want to reduce our loading times. So check that this isn't the case. I know I had to personally open my Nordic UI up and delete the smoke mesh it implemented, so it wouldn't overwrite the original smoke. Font replacers. Font replacers can be a nice way of spicing your UI up. I personally use the Sovngarde font replacer. It works well with Nordic UI and I recommend others to use it, but here's some other ones you might want to try out instead, if you're not into the Sovngarde font. Gameplay. Alright, now we're getting into the realm where UI and gameplay mods blend. I'll quickly go through some of the gameplay mods that implement or alter the UI in my build. True Directional Movement. TDM implements enemy health bars and a lock-on overlay. It also implements a widget to display boss health bars and enemy levels. There are, of course, many gameplay features TDM implements, like 360 sprinting and homing projectiles. So if you're interested in learning more, I'll link one of my videos where I cover it in detail. If you're going to be using TDM with iHUD, make sure you toggle the enemy health indicator enabled option off in its iHUD MCM. This ensures your UI is less cluttered. You'll be seeing the enemy's health via their TDM health bar anyway, so there's not much use in having another health bar at the top left of your screen. Also, if you're going to be using Nordic UI and True Directional Movement, make sure you have the TDM compatibility patch enabled in the faux mod when installing Nordic UI. Inpasecro. Inpasecro is a combat mod that comes with a special UI. I personally enjoy using it, but it does change a lot of the aspects of the game, one of them being repurposing the stamina meter into a posture meter. The mod also implements a symbol for when an enemy's posture breaks, so you'll know when they're vulnerable to attacks. And there are also symbols for unblockable enemy perilous attacks too. And on a mod page you can find an add-on to retexture these symbols to other ones, if you don't like the originals. Additionally, Inpasecro comes with optional add-ons for mods like Widget Mod, A Matter of Time, and Soul's Quick Menu. However, I personally prefer a UI that is less cluttered, so I decided not to add these add-ons to my game. But of course, you might enjoy using these mods, so consider taking a look at them. I however use Inpasecro's preset for More HUD, so if you want to do this as well, make sure you have FISS so you can import Inpasecro's preset into More HUD's MCM. Now here's something very important to mention. If you have Inpasecro's UI and Nordic UI, you need to pick which HUD from these mods you want to install. Both mods come with a SkyHUD preset. I personally installed Nordic UI without its HUD. In the faux mod for Nordic UI, I unticked the HUD and SkyHUD options. I then installed Inpasecro's UI, and in its faux mod, I selected the second Elder Scroll style option. Quick Loot RE. This mod adds a quick looting interface, just like in titles like Fallout 4. For me, this is an absolute must-have mod. It makes looting much less of a chore and it's implemented really well. Also, if you're going to be using Nordic UI and Quick Loot, make sure you have the Quick Loot compatibility patch enabled in the faux mod when installing Nordic UI. Smooth Cam. Smooth Cam is a camera mod, but it does implement a feature to provide an overlay that predicts the path of arrows and bolts when you're firing bows and crossbows. It's an interesting feature that I personally enjoy using, so I felt like mentioning it. It's quite customizable, and you're able to change the color of the overlay as well as the type of reticle used. Skyrim Souls. Skyrim Souls unpauses time when you're in menus. It changes the game quite substantially though, and it's definitely not for everybody, but I feel like it's worth mentioning that it's highly configurable. It comes with an INI file you can tinker around with. You can change the settings to only unpause the game when it's in a certain menu. You can also alter the speed of the game if you're in a certain menu. So for example, you can set up your game to be paused when you're in the favorites menu, but whilst you're in the, let's say, inventory menu, the game still runs, but at 20% of the speed. This way you can still browse through your inventory to take a potion during combat, but you still need to be careful doing so. Accessories. Alright, let's take a look at some accessory mods. This will be the icing on the cake. Forget spells. This mod adds a button to the spell menu UI that allows you to forget spells. Super useful when you have mods that automatically teach you spells when you install them. Spells you might not exactly want to use in a regular playthrough. Oxygen meter. A very simple mod that repurposes the enchantment charge meter to an oxygen meter whilst you are underwater. Very clever and handy. The Elder Scrolls Legends loading screens. Replaces the loading screens with new ones that use original art from the Elder Scrolls Legends card game. The art fits the game perfectly, technically from the Elder Scrolls universe, so in my opinion it's the best loading screen mod out there. Alternate Conversation Camera Plus. Zooms the camera in and provides letterboxes when you initiate dialogue. Highly configurable, and you can enable features like switching the camera to the player's face when they talk, or if you want, you can also disable the letterboxing in its INI file. Also, very quickly, this isn't a UI thing, but it could cause some frustration for some people. If you're running Alternate Conversation Camera Plus with True Directional Movement, make sure to set the dialogue mode in True Directional Movement's MCM to disabled, because if you don't do this, you might experience some weird things. Oblivion Interaction Icons. Implements very neat, simple interaction icons just like in Oblivion. These icons replace the text that pops up for interactions and results in a much sleeker UI that is less cluttered. Favorite miscellaneous items. Allows you to favorite miscellaneous items, useful for those who want to favorite items such as a loot. I did this because I use the Become a Bard mod, and so this allows me to favorite and play the loot when I press a button. Console Binder. Here's a mod I'm fairly certain none of you have heard before. It allows you to save console commands that you can execute using hotkeys. So you can imagine how useful this mod can be. I personally use Console Binder to set up a hotkey to execute the TM console command, so I can toggle the UI on and off with a push of a button. Well, that's the UI guide. I hope this video has helped you out. If you found this useful, do all that YouTube stuff like the video, comment, subscribe, and consider supporting the channel on Patreon. Take care.
Subscribe for maximum gains.